In this video, we'll take an in-depth look at the Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer movie game. Together we'll walk through the story while discussing its Easter eggs, references, and behind-the-scenes details, as well as how it compares to the movies and comics. However, I think the best place to start is at the beginning, with its development. Rise of the Silver Surfer is of course the sequel to Fantastic Four 2005, and for a sequel game, you expect a lot of baseline aspects from the first to return, but Rise of the Silver Surfer sees a surprising amount of shakeups to the original formula, both good and bad. The first difference is a big one, and it's the publisher and their development team. Activision published the first game, while 7 studios handled development. However, Activision lost the license shortly after releasing the first game, so Take-Two Interactive picked it up to publish the sequel. Take-Two was in the process of making some major moves, as they had just purchased development studio Visual Concepts, who was known then, and even still today, for their various 2K sports game series. Visual Concepts was handed the reins to develop this Fantastic Four game, and it's quite interesting to see them step outside of their sports niche, something they had only done a couple of times since launching their 2K series. I should mention that Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer was the last time they did this too, focusing solely on sports afterwards. But you may be wondering about 7 Studios, the developer of the first game. I have a full deep dive on the Fantastic Four 1 movie game, and if you haven't seen that, I actually praised a lot of the baseline gameplay features within it, and I felt that 7 Studios overall did a solid job. I wouldn't say it's large shoes to fill for Visual Concepts, but they certainly set some combat standards that we'll compare as we get further into the video. Interestingly, 7 Studios still remained involved with the sequel, but in a much smaller capacity as the developers of the PS2 and Wii versions. I played the PS2 version myself, which I'll provide some thoughts on later, but my focus will mostly be on the PS3 and 360 versions by Visual Concepts. Speaking of which, I was surprised to see that it had a very limited development window in order to release in time for the 2007 movie. More specifically, Visual Concepts were only given 15 months from start to finish to complete their game. Only a year and 3 months, when it seems like in most cases, you'd probably want at least 2 years to fully flesh out your game, so very rushed. Another big difference between this game and the first one is the voice cast, since in the 2005 game, the movie actors all voiced their roles. For this game though, none of them return. Beyond that, an article by IGN even states that they were told by a spokesperson that Jessica Alba didn't lend her likeness to be used in the game, so a similar looking body double was used instead. It sounds like we're off to a great start, doesn't it? But with those limitations in mind, I think it's time we started to look at the game more directly, beginning with its opening cutscene.
Okay, walk me through this again, Reed. How does what's going on underground have anything to do with all that craziness up there?
Yeah, I got the same question as Hothead here.
All of my readings correlate exactly to this location. I've tracked a large cosmic energy spike to these coordinates. Find the source and maybe, just maybe, we'll be able to figure out why Earth is experiencing such strange weather anomalies.
This would so have to happen when I'm still trying to find a caterer.
Oi, the wedding!
Don't push it.
Look out!
Johnny, we could use some light.
Got it, sis. Flame on! What do you think?
Ben, we're gonna need an assist here.
Yeah, and Big Rock, make Little Rocks.
No problem. Step aside, Sparky.
Alright, so already there's quite a lot to unpack. I mentioned the voices up front, so let's start there. Once I got over the expectation of hearing the movie actors, I warmed up to most of these performances. The voice of Reed Richards landed the best for me, as the actor sounded a lot like Ioan Gruffudd from the movie, to the point I even had to double check it wasn't him. The actor is instead Matt Kaminsky, who's primarily a live-action actor, with roles in many various TV series like NCIS and Boston Legal. In fact, most of this voice cast are predominantly TV actors, including Erin Matthews, voicing Invisible Woman. However, she has a good amount of voice acting credits to her name as well, including another Marvel character, specifically Rogue in X-Men Legends 1. Michael Broderick voices Human Torch and seems to be giving it a good effort. He's another TV actor, but it was cool to see that he landed this role early in his career, with it only being his 4th IMDb credit. Lastly, we have Joey Kamen voicing the Thing. He's the outlier of the cast since he's the most experienced with voice acting. His prior role that stood out to me most was in Space Jam as the Monstar Bang. Unfortunately, Thing's voice in this game was the one I struggled with most. I think Joey supplies a decent gruffness to it, but the line readings often didn't land for me. In all fairness, I think a lot of the problem is the cheesy writing, and "Oi, the wedding" is a line that certainly stands out as an example. I should warn you, it doesn't get any better from here, and we'll definitely encounter more cheesy moments as we continue. Speaking of the writing, another problem I have is how exposition heavy it can be, especially in this opening cutscene. Johnny begins a conversation on why they're here, and you can tell the point of it is to quickly bring the player up to speed on the background details just through dialogue, instead of more adequately setting the stage. I'm sure this is due to the limited development timeline and the expectation that we've already seen the movie, but it still felt too rushed and vague. Typically, I prefer stories to follow the show-don't-tell rule, because we get much better context for the overarching story and it all sticks so much better. So I would have liked to have seen some of these weather anomalies and us being led to this point in the first place, especially because I thought the movie actually did a good job of this itself. As it stands, my first time playing, not all of this background info stuck, so upon entering this first level I was thinking, wait, so what are we doing? The main beats are similar to the movie though, in that there are strange weather anomalies occurring around the world, and that Reed's devices have picked up large cosmic energy readings from this location, so he thinks they could be linked. Oh, and then there's also the wedding that Reed and Sue are planning that gets thrown in at the end too. But on a more positive note about this game, something I do want to compliment are its graphics. You of course expect a graphical increase between console generations, but this feels like a very significant upgrade in visual quality. I should mention that I'm using the emulator RPCS3 to upscale the graphics, but even still it's clear that the visuals received a lot of attention back in the day. The faces and their animations in particular stood out to me, and we'll look at some environments later that are especially captivating. Unfortunately, the next environment isn't one of those, as we explore a dark, relatively empty mining cave, but it's also where our tutorial takes place, so let's talk about the gameplay. One of the first things you'll notice about it is that we have the entire team by our side this time. In the first game, one of my main criticisms was that the majority of the levels contained only 1 or 2 playable characters, so I was happy to see that we get to play as the full team for the majority of this game. Visual Concepts adopted a Marvel Ultimate Alliance style of gameplay, where we can swap between each character at will, and each hero has 4 special abilities at their disposal. There are even fusion attacks where 2 players can join forces for a powerful move. The melee combat is quite basic though, as each character only has 2 combos, a light attack chain and a heavy attack chain. You also get a bonus attack by holding circle, which usually results in a small AoE move. In an interview with GameSpot, lead designer Chase Jones stated that their goal was to keep things intuitive and family-friendly, in the way that you could have a friend jump into the gameplay and pick it up very quickly. I think it succeeds in that, but I was personally hoping for a little more depth, since I think the first game managed to be intuitive while still allowing for more advanced skill progression, like the way you unlock new, useful melee combos throughout the story. Here, there are some cool abilities, but they're all unlocked from the start, and enemies don't differ much, so you'll largely perform the same attacks and strategies throughout the entirety of the game. As far as my initial impressions of the combat, it honestly feels like a step backward compared to the first game. In that one, the special attacks all felt really powerful, varied, and there was a satisfying crunchiness to each hit. Here, there's a decent variety of special moves, but only a couple that feel useful. The hits don't have that satisfying impact anymore, and instead feel kinda wimpy. I think part of it is the sound design. Some attacks sound good, but for the majority of the game, I didn't feel like I was getting the same degree of great audio feedback that I was in the first. To give you an idea of what I mean, I want to play a couple of early clips from both games for comparison. We'll look at the sequel first to give a baseline, and then I'll play some clips from the first game.
I'm ready.
So some decent impacts, but in my opinion, overall a bit limp, now compared to the first game. The sequel's combat is missing some kind of extra oomph, whether that be additional sound or visual effects, I'm not exactly sure, but I'm definitely missing that added sense of impact. The attack animations also look very stiff and uninspired. like the way Torch keeps his elbows in and just kind of punches fireballs at people, or similarly how Sue shoots force discs. There's no power behind the animation, it looks like she's just serving them up to the enemy. There are some cool ones though, like the way Reed will reach out for enemies in any direction you point him in to grab at an enemy even behind him. I also love Torch's ability to flame on and off at will without draining energy. It's a simple feature, but it was cool lighting up dark rooms or just staying in flame form for fun. His flight feels excellent too, torpedoing towards enemies or even just using it to quickly explore an area. He was my go-to traversal character for that reason. Continuing on with the negatives though, I found that certain animations made combat feel slow, like the way you pause at the end of some melee combos, or that getting staggered results in a rather lengthy reaction animation, and there's also a painfully slow get up animation if you get knocked down. These were common occurrences and contributed to giving the combat a very start and stop pace. On a similar note, I found the KO system to be rather strange. Usually when a hero gets KO'd in a game, you either need to try and heal them yourself, or you need to make it to a checkpoint to revive them. Here it seems like it's expected that your characters will go down very often because they're just put on a short timer, and once that timer is up, they'll automatically revive. There's no limit to the amount of times this can happen either, so there's no penalty unless your whole team gets wiped at the same time. I'm sure some of this goes back to the idea of making the game very casual friendly, but I also can't help but wonder if it's a bit of a band-aid fix, because I found that my teammates would go down often to the point it just became a normal occurrence, and in later levels, KOs were especially frequent. There is another aspect of the gameplay that I want to compliment though, and it's that I think there are some good ideas surrounding how your abilities interact with the environment. As you explore this level, you'll encounter tutorials informing you of how you can bypass different barriers using a specific hero. For example, breaking down a door using the Thing, stretching to punch a high up button as Mr. Fantastic, using a force field to grab an object and launch it into a control panel as Invisible Woman, or flying over a laser grid as the Human Torch. Later levels will mix these up in more advanced ways, so I really like these little puzzles since they got me interacting with the environment more, as well as switching between characters to solve them. So I think the puzzles in this game are much stronger. There's more I want to discuss about the combat and overall gameplay, but we'll get into that later in the video. For now, I want to pick back up with the game's narrative, as we're now deeper into the mines. As you may have noticed, we're not fighting against humans, and instead, the team have come across an alien race, the Skrull, a shape-shifting alien species from the comics. I thought it was fitting we'd encounter the Skrull since they were first introduced in Fantastic Four issue number 2. In that story, the Skrull wanted to take over Earth, but deemed the Fantastic Four as the only beings on the planet as a threat to their conquest. So they sent 4 Skrull agents ahead of the invasion to impersonate the team, in hopes that Earth would turn against the Fantastic Four and remove them from the board, leaving Earth ripe for the taking. Of course, this didn't work out, and the Skrull's plan was thwarted. Reed even hypnotized the agents to morph themselves into cows and live their lives on a pasture. Still, this wasn't the Skrull race's last attempt at conquering Earth, which ties in with the last part of this level, since once we reach the heart of the mining operation, our first boss emerges, the Super Skrull. As you can see by his thing-like rock hand, he has the combined abilities of the Fantastic Four all within himself. In the game's lore, this is due to a couple of reasons. The first ties in with the cosmic energy surges, which I assume is what the Skrull are attempting to mine. Prior to entering this room, the Fantastic Four encountered the source of the surges, a silver being that flew past them, and in doing so, caused the Four's powers to short out momentarily. Whatever effect the cosmic energy has on their powers also assisted the Super Skrull in inheriting the abilities of the Fantastic Four. Throughout the level, we can find TV screens showing each member of the team and their attributes, suggesting that he's been studying them. So thanks to the research and the cosmic energy, the Super Skrull is now active and ready to take them on. This isn't too far off from his comic origins either. When the Skrull returned to try and conquer Earth again, it was also via the Super Skrull. Skrull scientists experimented on their agent, Kalert, and imbued him with the powers of the Fantastic Four, but to a heightened degree. For example, he could stretch farther than Reed, and could fly faster than the Torch. He was the Skrull's secret weapon, and was sent to defeat them solo. He was nearly successful too, until Reed used his science wit to concoct a plan. He realized that these Skrulls were beaming some kind of energy to Kalert from space to power his abilities, so Reed created a jammer that could depower the Super Skrull long enough for them to trap him in a crater. Super Skrull of course returns, but I don't believe he's still reliant on getting cosmic energy beamed to him. Still, I like how this boss fight references that a bit through the energy shield behind him. We have to damage it enough to cut the power, leaving Super Skrull temporarily vulnerable. I also enjoyed seeing Super Skrull's abilities in action as he replicates the team's powers, for example, stretching and whipping his arm around, using a rock fist punch, creating giant fire blasts, and turning invisible to escape. I'm also just happy he was chosen for the game, because I always felt a little ripped off that the end of the movie basically makes Johnny Super Skrull, when I was hoping the series would instead introduce the actual character. So it's nice to see him in the game at least, and I thought he was well done here. This was a pretty solid boss fight too, and there's a lot to juggle. Not only are you trying to attack the device to depower it, but you're also dealing with hordes of Skrull minions while also trying to keep your distance from Super Skrull. It was also a pretty lengthy fight, and overall I think it was a strong opening boss battle. Once we defeat him though, the volcano we're in begins to erupt, so Sue protects us in a force bubble as we ride our way out of the volcano. From here, we go to a level that more closely resembles the movie, the wedding of Reed and Sue.
Beyond that, sir, the aliens we encountered and our mysterious visitor remain a mystery, as it were.
You really believe this threat to be extraterrestrial in origin, Dr. Richards?
Yes, and I've built a transponder on top of the Baxter building to track it. When our friend decides to become active again, this device should give me a warning.
What about this missing Kragoff fellow?
Dr. Ivan Kragoff, a Cold War scientist. His theories helped me shortcut the process of building the transponder. He might be able to explain what we're facing and how to stop it. If we knew where he was.
Leave that to me, Richards. We'll find him.
Hey, Reed, we gotta go.
Just one more thing.
Nope. The thing says no more things. Your bride is waiting. Sorry, General.
Now, wait a minute. We're not through here.
Come on. It's marrying time. You're a lucky man, Reed. What is that, your phone?
That's our luck running out.
Looks like we got us some wedding crashers.
You look so beautiful. I'm sorry about this.
Me too.
Flame on! Well, I'm ready.
There are a few things I want to go over before we get into the level itself. The first is that Reed is discussing the cosmic energy surges with General Hager from the movie. You might recall from the film that he's the one who seeks out Reed to help track the energy surges, and Reed builds a sensor for him. As we discussed in the last video, a neat detail about the General is that he was originally written to be Nick Fury. Unfortunately for the film, Marvel declined his usage, likely because they wanted to use Nick to set up their MCU Avengers series a year later, but regardless, General Hager was the replacement. I also found his accompanying soldier in the movie noteworthy as well. Her name is Frankie Ray, and throughout the film, her and Johnny form a relationship. Interestingly, as I was reading early drafts of the first movie, I found that she was actually planned to be introduced there. She would have been the girl Johnny was snowboarding with instead of the nurse, and their relationship would progress from there. Besides being a love interest for Johnny, she has a more notable presence in the comics, since she becomes a flame-powered superhero as well, known as Nova, not to be confused with the Richard Rider Nova. Frankie even becomes a Herald of Galactus in the comics, a title and being we might as well discuss now. So as you probably know, the silver being who's causing all these cosmic disturbances is none other than the Silver Surfer, a Herald of Galactus. If you're unfamiliar, Galactus is a cosmic being who feeds on planets to sustain himself. He doesn't do this out of malice, but out of need. He's a force of nature, and his hunger is unending. To scout potential planets for him, he employs a Herald, which he imbues with a small portion of his power called the Power Cosmic. Even though the amount he gives is small to Galactus, in the grand scheme it's still very substantial, making his heralds extremely powerful beings in their own right. The most famous of his heralds is the Silver Surfer, but he wasn't always a herald. His origins begin on the planet Zenlaw, where he was a normal man named Norrin Rad. Zenlaw was a thriving world and by all means perfect. Norrin had everything he could ever want, including the love of his life, Shala Bal. Still, Norrin felt the people of Zenlaw had become complacent with their life and no longer strived for anything. Norrin wanted more for himself, specifically a life of adventure exploring space, and this ate away at him. Soon though, Norrin would get his wish in an unexpected way, when Galactus chose Zenlaw as his next meal, and began his approach. The inhabitants of Zenlaw panicked and didn't know what to do to stop Galactus. As a last-ditch effort, Norrin chose to fly a spacecraft up to him in an attempt to barter. Galactus agreed, and during their conversation, he revealed that he needed a herald, someone who could quickly scout and select planets for him to feed on. Norrin knew this meant he had to offer to be Galactus' herald, but this carried a heavy cost. Zenlaw and its people would be spared, but serving Galactus is a lifetime agreement, so he'd be giving up his life in Zenlaw, but more importantly, he couldn't be with Shala Bal again. Still, Norrin accepted the agreement, and Galactus covered his body in a silver alloy that would protect and allow him to breathe through his space travels. He also granted him a board to assist in flying through the cosmos, but more on the board a bit later. Before scouting his first planet, he returned to Shalabal to sadly say goodbye. In his travels, Norn misses Shalabal dearly and thinks of her often, with the only distraction being the enjoyment of exploring the wonders of space. So Norn essentially got his wish of being a space adventurer in a monkey's paw kinda way. As far as the planets he sought out, Norn always aimed to select planets with no life on them. This doesn't always pan out though, such as if he hasn't found one in time and Galactus becomes impatient. It's suggested in an early comic that this is how Earth was selected, since it was nearby and Galactus needed to eat soon. In a 2018 comic, it's shown that Galactus also threatens to consume Zenlaw if Surfer takes too long to pick a planet. So with no uninhabited options, Surfer had to make a choice. His surface level assessment of Earth was that its humans were polluting their own planet and are trapped in a cycle of war and hate that will inevitably lead to their own extinction. So he decides it's a good option for Galactus. He's not exactly off base. But no matter the reason, the Surfer's arrival to Earth was a big deal and was even his first appearance in the comics, Fantastic Four 48, which is what the movie and game are based on. I should point out though that in the comics, once Silver Surfer locates a viable planet, he just enters and fires off a beacon, while also maybe warning the people that Galactus is coming so they have a bit of time to evacuate. This differs from the movie since he's instead shown taking a lot of time to prep the planet for consumption via these craters. As part of the Surfer's preparations, he ends up in New York, and this puts him in direct conflict with the Fantastic Four, where he inadvertently ruins the wedding. This is also loosely based on the comics, since the marriage of Reed and Sue was a big event there too. However, it's not the Surfer who ruins it. Instead, it's Dr. Doom when he learns about the wedding. As we discussed in the last video, Doom is very petty, and in this case, he decides to ruin things by using his emotion charger, which emits a frequency that will amplify the aggression of the Fantastic Four's foes, causing them to feel the need to attack at this very moment. Thankfully, many of the attending guests were superheroes, so they assisted in fending off the attacks. As you can imagine, this comic was jam-packed with cameo appearances and all sorts of heroes and villains, so it's a pretty cool issue for that reason. The cameos go beyond superheroes too, as at the end of the issue, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby insert themselves as guests trying to attend, but are turned away. The movie makes a nice reference to that, as Stan Lee tries to enter and is thrown out in similar fashion. Sadly, Jack Kirby had passed away in 1994, which is why he's not here too. Going back to the game, our next level is a fight along the rooftops against Silver Surfer's minions. Earlier, I mentioned the environments occasionally looking really good, and this was the first one that caught my eye, due to a really gorgeous cityscape that I just had to stop and admire. The level itself is pretty straightforward though. We'll traverse the rooftops as we fight off more minions, and then just return back to the Baxter building. This is where we finally come face to face with the Surfer and attempt to pursue him via an alien craft. It's not clear in the cutscene, but there are other alien crafts flying around at the same time, but they soon begin to lose control for some unknown reason. Sue can't stop them all, and one of them falls towards a crowd of people. The Surfer spots it and decides to save the civilians. Despite the sloppiness of this cutscene, I thought this was a good way to display the empathy of Silver Surfer. The whole planet will soon be destroyed, so anyone else may say, why bother? But the Surfer cares for people, and this will be important later. Still, the Surfer has a job to do, and creates a crater in the ground that he escapes into. Johnny pursues him, leading to a level that replicates what I would argue is the movie's best scene, the chase between the two of them. The game handles it in a pretty cool way too if you're playing a PS3 copy, since this console introduced the 6-axis controller, which can sense the direction it's being tilted. This is how you'll control Johnny, by tilting the controller around to steer him. As you'd expect, it was a little sluggish to control, but it was still a unique experience and responsive enough that it was a fun section. Thematically, the chase looks very cool too, as you dodge parts of the environment and oncoming trains. The Surfer is very fast, so you have to boost your speed to keep up. This can be tricky to manage, since not only does boosting consume your energy meter, but if you get too close to the Surfer and end up in his energy trail, it'll deplete your energy as well. So I like these different layers to the chase sequences and found them to be very exciting. I also want to just compliment the developers for not making this a QuickTime event, because you know that's exactly what this section would be in any other movie game. In fact, there are no QuickTime events in this game, which is a huge positive in itself. So a big thank you to Visual Concepts for not putting us through a Reed Richards dance scene QTE. Once you reach the end of this section, Surfer escapes, and Johnny joins the rest of the team in the city streets. We'll fight our way through more minions until we encounter a spaceship, and although it's a bit generic, it was admittedly a pretty decent fight. Since it's flying, you have to get more creative with your attacks, like throwing objects as the Thing, or stretching up to it as Mr. Fantastic. Or more easily, you can just blast it as the Torch. Still, I'm so used to fighting grounded villains that this was a nice change of pace. Honestly though, this whole section could have been cut, because it has no story relevance, and after defeating the ship, Johnny just flies after the surfer again as we enter another chase sequence. This one replicates the movie much closer and even recreates certain moments from it. As the surfer and Torch exit the tunnel though, somehow the rest of the team are already jogging ahead of them. At this moment, the team takes a moment to chat, and it's where we discover that the surfer's cosmic energy causes the team to swap powers with each other if they touch. That's important in the movie, but this is the only time it's referenced in the game and serves no purpose. Soon, the surfer returns, and Johnny takes off after him. We won't do another flying section though, as the general calls Reed to tell him that they found Ivan Kragoff, the scientist Reed believes could be helpful. Ivan's last known location was space, so we head there next. Immediately upon entry, it's clear this won't be an easy mission. We're abruptly locked in, and the space station feels like something out of a horror movie, very dark and run down. There are also a bunch of traps scattered throughout the area that we need to navigate using the team's powers. The craziest part though is when we encounter the minions of the station and discover that they're all apes. If you know the comics, this makes more sense, so let's discuss Ivan Kragoff's comic origins. So when he was created, it was before the real-world moon landing, so the space race between the United States and Russia was a relevant topic. In Ivan's origin comic, Reed discovered a booster fuel powerful enough to finally get them to the moon. At the same time, Ivan also planned to shuttle to the moon, but he had the unique idea of using apes as his crew. He spent time training them to obey his orders, to the point he was confident that they could aid him in space. Ivan also had another plan in mind besides just reaching the moon. He had been studying the Fantastic Four and how they received their powers via cosmic rays, which he hoped to replicate for himself. He even intended to amplify the effect by constructing his ship in a transparent ceramic plastic that would allow even more rays to bleed through his ship. Coincidentally, Ivan's space expedition occurred at the same time as the Fantastic Four's, to the point the team even witnessed the event. As predicted, the cosmic rays gave Kragoff abilities, but not just him, also his ape crewmates. Ivan's superpower is that he can turn himself intangible, and he dubbed himself the Red Ghost. As far as who won the space race in the comics, it was determined through a fight between the Red Ghost and the Fantastic Four, refereed by the Watcher of all people, who had already set up shop on the moon ahead of them. Using a device he created, Reed was able to defeat Red Ghost, and the Watcher deemed them the winners. Obviously, those origins don't fully apply to the game, since the space race isn't relevant today. Instead, it said that Ivan was studying cosmic energy in this space station when he disappeared. We can assume that he brought apes along and that they encountered cosmic rays, since we'll find that they're all enhanced, and that Ivan already has his Red Ghost abilities. But first, we still need to reach him, so we'll spend this level fighting through a bunch of enhanced apes, and along the way, Reed even gets a solo level, something each member of the Fantastic Four will get throughout the game. Johnny's was technically the flying missions, so this is our second one. It's a pretty cool one too, as Reed has to navigate a bunch of tripwires using his elasticity. He has a dive move as one of his special abilities, which is how he slinks through openings between the lasers. This is the gist of what you'll be doing during his mission, but I enjoyed the puzzle aspect of it, and it was cool trying to find ways to combine his abilities to get through the area. I should mention that although one of my complaints in the first game was the solo missions, it was more so the ratio of how many there were compared to the amount of team missions, because there were very few of those. Here, I think having a one-off mission for each hero is a fun way to give them the spotlight and allow the player to explore their powers more. But after Reed's level, he regroups with the team and finds the data he was looking for.
All of Kragoff's data on cosmic energy. Wait, there's something else.
What is it?
Take a look.
Son of a...
He's got morphological data on each of us. Histories, personal information.
How personal?
Very.
Oh my. I didn't know you could do that.
Do what?
Don't look! Reed, little help, please?
Hey, the system just booted me out.
Ugh, good.
Why are you here? And why are you hacking my data?
Ivan Kragoff?
That name is but a memory, a shadow of the Cold War era. Those who know me now whisper my name in fear. Red Ghost.
Red Ghost? Dude, you gotta get a better name than that.
Oh, perhaps we should ask King for his opinion.
Red Ghost works for me.
Whatever your name, Dr. Kragoff or Red Ghost. Right now, we need your help.
You know about what's happening on Earth, don't you?
Earth? Its fate is already sealed. The Devourer of Worlds will soon arrive. Enough cosmic energy has been released for him to feed. From here, you will have a front row seat to this world's destruction.
I'm gonna take a rain check on that one.
The invitation is non-negotiable. Prove you are worthy of it, or you shall die.
I want to compliment Red Ghost's design here. He looks very creepy, almost like he's already dead, very fitting of the ghost part of his name. He also alludes to the Devourer of Worlds coming, which is another name for Galactus who we discussed earlier. From here, we fight our way through more apes until we find a computer terminal to activate a transponder, at which point we're introduced to another notable character.
There's a huge cosmic surge coming from here.
Looks like it's centered on the Himalayas.
Then it's gotta be that surfer dude, right?
Kragoff, I have important information about the
Doom?
the less than fantastic four. Hello, Susan.
Victor?
I thought we put you on ice.
Oh, you did. But there is an alien radiating cosmic energy that did wonders for me. Brought me back around. Indirectly, of course. I've been following this alien's movements ever since. Interested, Reed?
Don't, Reed. Don't trust him. He's working with Kragoff.
What are you up to, Victor?
At first, I believed I could utilize the power of the alien for my own, Susan. I admit, my intentions were less than noble.
Well, that sounds like you.
However, now that I realize that the destruction of the world is imminent, well, I've had a change of heart.
You can't change what you don't got.
If there is no world, then what is there for me to rule?
That makes sense, in a weird kind of way. What have you discovered about the alien?
He is a herald, a scout for something more powerful and terrible than himself.
And that would be the world chomper that old man Ghosty mentioned. Hey, I've been following along.
I hate to admit it, but we may need Doom's help.
It's a conundrum.
You weren't getting us a dictionary for a wedding present, now were you, Johnny?
I see you tracked the alien to the Himalayas. I'm getting your data now.
How? We didn't send you anything yet.
Reed, the long-range sensors are offline.
What are you up to, Doom?
Moi?
This place is coming apart.
Then we haven't got much time.
Yep, Doom has returned and is now seated on the throne of Latveria, this time voiced by Gideon Emery, who does a pretty solid impression of Julian McMahon. As far as where you might know Gideon outside of the game, I recognized him best as Anatoly from Season 1 of the Netflix Daredevil series, although he also voiced Moon Knight in Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. Going back to Doom, as we saw in the movie, the Surfer's cosmic energy brought Doom back when he flew by. It seems in the meantime he's been working with Red Ghost to thwart the Fantastic Four somehow, and he's been attempting to use the Surfer's emergence for his own personal plans. We'll have to worry about those plans later, as the shuttle is now under red alert due to a cosmic storm that will destroy the station, meaning the team needs to quickly escape. For the rest of this level, we'll work our way through the station as we attempt to reach the exit. When we do, there's surprisingly not a boss fight, just one last interaction with Red Ghost before we head out.
Come with us, Ivan.
And abandon my research and my children. Never.
He's made his choice, Sue.
We'd better hurry up and make ours.
Go.
We're gone.
Someone must have disabled the sensors that would have warned Kragoff of a cosmic storm.
Not someone. Doom.
We can't trust him. What a shock!
Do we have another option?
For now, none. None whatsoever.
From here, the team heads to the Himalayas to investigate another energy signature. As soon as they arrive, a monk sprints out of the cave to warn them that, as he describes it, the power wielder is loose. The four shrug off the warning and continue forward. Inside, we find a bunch of rock monsters, as well as some new crystal puzzles. I thought these puzzles in particular were fun, where you have to bounce light from crystal to open a path. It's nothing we haven't seen in other games, of course, but I thought there were some fun, inventive additions, like needing Mr. Fantastic to punch through a gap to rotate a cube, using Thing's strength to punch crystals around, or have Sue use her force bubble to reflect light upward. This level was quite puzzle intensive, but I actually think that worked to its benefit, not only because the puzzles were well done, but also because otherwise, this would just be another combat section in a dimly lit interior. As we descend deeper, we learn there's a lot more to this location than just any old cave, as there's an ancient element to it, as well as information found by Sue.
There's a common theme, a herald who foretells the arrival of a great destructor. According to these carvings, there's more than one herald.
Well, isn't that just great?
Could explain the reading spike I got earlier.
Our hands are already full with one of these guys. How are we supposed to beat two of them?
This goes back to the comics, where there were indeed multiple Heralds of Galactus, which we'll discuss more shortly. For now, we next get Thing's solo mission, as well as more rock monsters. This level is really strangely set up though, because we just saw the team standing closely together, and then we jump to a door closing in the distance, isolating Ben. I have to wonder if the developers were like, whoops, we forgot to include a Thing solo mission and threw it in here, because it's quite short in relation to the other members' missions too, and is essentially just another combat section. It's also a pretty challenging one, since the monsters deal out good damage. However, I'm not sure it's necessarily the challenge of the monsters, but instead an example of a larger problem I experienced, which was how the game's leveling system hinders the combat. For more context, earlier I mentioned that the combat felt lesser compared to the first game for me, and although that's true, I should add that I think there's actually a decent foundation for solid combat at the beginning of this game. Each character feels unique from one another in function, and I like the fusion system as a concept. However, things start to feel restricted as you get further into the game, and surprisingly, I think it's the leveling system. In the first game, I complimented the extensiveness of its upgrade menu and how it required a second playthrough to fully max out. Now I can recognize that it was also well balanced, allowing the gameplay to still feel consistent. The sequel struggles here since it doubles down on extensiveness, to an overwhelming degree. Not only are there a bunch of upgrade pips for basic stats like health, melee damage, defense, and energy, but also pips for each character's individual special abilities, each one with its own breakdown of additional pips like damage, energy consumption, and blast radius. You only have one pool of points to spend from, and upgrading one pip doesn't apply to all characters either, so you'll need to individually allocate points for each character's pips. So for example, if I upgrade the attack damage of Human Torch, that doesn't then upgrade the attack damage of the other characters. I need to do that separately for each of them too, assuming I still had enough points remaining. In that same GameSpot interview with Chase Jones, he states that the idea was to give the player a lot of freedom in how they build out their characters. So for example, you could try to take a very balanced approach to the team, or make one big powerhouse hero. I think it's good to give players freedom like that, but it feels too vast here, especially for such a short game, since it's only about 5 hours long. The reason I say this affected the core gameplay for me was because it forced me to start making some pretty restrictive decisions. There weren't enough points to fully balance everything out, so I needed to be very selective. That meant building into one character a bit more, or focusing on just a couple of key abilities for each hero. The result was that something was always left behind. In some games, that can be a good thing as you strategize and focus builds, but this isn't that deep of a game. So what happened in my case was I had to ignore some abilities, which are already in limited supply. But these were usually what I refer to as the puzzle abilities. Looking at Reed, for example, these are his periscope punch, where he stretches high to hit a switch, or his dive that he uses to get through lasers. Both have practical combat applications, like trying to juggle an enemy in the air or to leap away from a crowd of enemies, but it's clear they were mostly built to be used for puzzles, since they aren't nearly as consistently useful as his more damaging attacks, like his headbutt or his grenades, so naturally I built into those. Ben doesn't really have puzzle abilities like that though, and instead has two buff attacks, like his defense buff indicated by him glowing here, or the damage buff shown by his glowing hands. The other two attacks are more straightforward, like an AoE shockwave and a shoulder charge, and these were the two that I built into for him, which brings me to the solo level. The buffs seemed like the go-to approach here to outlast these swarms of enemies, but what actually helped me was ignoring those abilities completely, since triggering just one of them would rapidly drain my energy meter, leaving me with just melee attacks for a long period until it recharged. So I was better off spamming the shockwave ability and the shoulder charge. Now, of course, some attacks are always going to be stronger than others as you upgrade things, and I'm sure other players would find success building primarily into the buff attacks, but I think the same problem still remains. The game pushes you to favor one or two key abilities and ignore the rest, which feels restrictive and by extension, repetitive. It's not just this solo mission either, and I'm highlighting it only because it was the most glaring example for me, but this problem extended to my entire playthrough and how I approached each fight. I imagine this is also why characters can infinitely revive, because it's tough to get everyone's defenses up adequately without ignoring other important upgrades. The game tries to implement a couple defensive abilities to help mitigate this, but they're not very useful. For example, Sue can put a force bubble around herself, but she can't walk around while using it or place individual ones on teammates. Torch can put up a defensive flame wall, but it was too clunky to use reliably. Aside from Reed, there's no evade move, but you can at least block attacks, but you can still take damage while blocking, and I felt like I needed to stay mobile or risk getting crowded, so I didn't use this much either. Mostly I wanted abilities that allowed me to defend my teammates so they wouldn't go down as often, since as it stands, the solution seems to be to pump resources into defense or recovery upgrades so they revive faster, even though there are other stats I needed to upgrade with those limited resources. So all that to say, I found the upgrade system to be too broad, to the point it further limits an already limited combat system. It needed to be balanced out or condensed in some way to actually feel like an upgrade, since as it stands, I constantly felt like I was falling behind and just trying to catch up. Even still, my problem isn't as much with difficulty either, since this game is actually pretty easy. It's more that it reduced fun factor by restricting abilities, making the combat feel very stale. Going back to the story though, once you beat this group of enemies, the Thing's solo mission feels even more stitched together as you just cut to being on the other side of the wall with your team again. No dialogue, no cutscene, it's like nothing happened. So we'll just carry on. Soon we make our way back outside where we get another really gorgeous landscape shot, this time of the mountains. As pretty as it is, it also made me a bit frustrated that we don't have more exterior levels with scenery like this. A lot of the levels are stuck inside some dark interior, making environments in general feel pretty bland. Then you see great landscapes like this, proving that visual concepts could put us in some really great looking environments, but either chose not to or didn't have the time to really flesh them out. There's another cool environmental detail here too, and it's this statue if you go off the beaten path. This is a statue of one of Galactus's heralds, Terrax the Tamer. We might as well discuss him now because he'll be our main villain for this chapter. At one point in the comics, the Fantastic Four needed to make a deal with Galactus to save Earth. Galactus agreed, but his side of the bargain was for the Fantastic Four to seek out a ruler named Tyros, subdue him, and then bring him back to Galactus to be his next herald. Tyros was chosen for a couple of reasons. The first was his ability to control Earth matter. Galactus stated in this comic that he themed each of his heralds around the elements. Silver Surfer was water, Airwalker was air, Fire Lord fire, leaving Tyros to be Earth. When Galactus imbued a portion of the power cosmic into Tyros, he became Terrax the Tamer, and his Earth manipulation abilities were greatly amplified. He was also granted a cosmic axe as a weapon. The second reason Galactus sought out Tyros was because he knew he didn't have much of a conscience. Galactus stated that his prior heralds were, quote, men of morality, men whose principles led them to leave me. So Galactus wanted to test out someone with less morality to see if they served him better. He was partially right, since Terrax was a conqueror by heart and had no problem leading Galactus to inhabited planets. Still, Terrax wasn't very loyal and took opportunities to betray Galactus by attempting to conquer planets himself and become their leader. Galactus gave him a few chances, but after one betrayal too many, he ended up removing the power cosmic from Terrax and discarding him to Earth. I think the game does a good job of highlighting many of these details. Seeing a statue of Terrax and fighting rock minions feels fitting given his Earth abilities. As much as I've been complaining about being inside another cave environment, it makes sense that Terrax would be somewhere within the Earth. It doesn't take long before we find Terrax himself, sitting atop a stone throne. I think Visual Concepts did a good job designing Terrax here, since he looks scary and his size is really intimidating. Just looking at him gives you a great sense of his power and threatening nature, which is perfect. He's in no mood to talk either, and quickly launches his axe at us. This begins his boss fight, which is along the same lines as the rest of the chapter, since it's more puzzle-based. Crystals and bells emerge from the surface, meaning we have to reflect the lights correctly to weaken Terrax, all while fighting off his various rock minions and dodging his axe. Each time we successfully reflect the light, Terrax will become vulnerable and will damage him until he regains his durability. Throughout the fight, new configurations of crystals emerge for a more challenging puzzle. This felt like a good final exam of sorts, as we've spent this whole level learning how to properly solve the crystal puzzles, and now we're doing it one last time while under a lot of pressure. So I found it to be fun and well designed in that sense, but it was still a bit frustrating when I'd constantly get knocked down while trying to focus on the puzzle. Still, I'd say this is probably the best boss fight in the game due to its intricacy, or it's at least the most unique boss fight of the game. That's the extent of this fight though, as we'll essentially just follow the pattern of reflecting the light and then beat up Terrax. Once we deplete his health bar, he'll cartoonishly stumble backward and through the wall, plummeting off the mountain. I doubt he's dead, but the Fantastic Four aren't too bothered, as Victor Von Doom's helicopter awaits them. The scene then cuts to the team in the forest, ready to capture the Surfer, but more on that in a moment. Sticking with the Terrax chapter, despite the blandness of the interiors, I thought its puzzly gameplay at least felt unique from the other levels, making it, for me, one of the standout chapters. So I was bummed at the conclusion here, not only because of the goofy send-off for Terrax, but also this level is ultimately pointless in the grand scheme of the narrative. The cosmic energy spike they earlier thought was the Surfers was really just Terrax, so it was kind of an accidental mission with no consequence or benefit gained. I guess you could maybe say it gave Reed more data, but I think that's a stretch, no pun intended. I actually think the PS2 does it better here, since you at least get to talk with Terrax midway into the fight, and he gives you some nuggets of information that lead you into the next level. Nothing super exciting, but the information he gives at least feels like some kind of payoff for this level, instead of it feeling like a needless detour in the PS3 one. While we're on the topic of the PS2 version, I felt that its dialogue was the area where it exceeded over the next-gen versions. The conversations between characters felt more natural, and the writing was better in general, including the jokes. Even the voice performances seemed better.
Good call, Sue. The power cosmic is as strong here as in that Skrull lair.
I'm just sorry I made such a fuss about our wedding. This is more important, Reed. You were right.
Hear that, Reed? Don't say a word. Just enjoy the feeling.
I sense some other force behind these creatures, Reed.
Someone's using power cosmic to animate the mountain, turning the rock itself against us.
You mean these mineral heads don't have brains?
Which means you might have a chance, Matchstick.
Look, on the monitor. It's Doom.
I knew the army would send someone, Reed, but I didn't dare hope it would be you.
Victor? What's going on? What are you doing?
Saying goodbye. I'm afraid your engagement will be a short one, Susan. Your fiancé has doomed you all.
Attention! You have initiated our base self-destruct program. Countdown has begun. Self-destruct in 30 minutes.
Doom! He's taken over the base. No wonder we're being attacked. We have to move. Come on!
What has Doom done to him?
We're on our way, guy. Hang in there.
Hey, Rockhead, it's a TV screen. He can't hear you. You know that, right?
Please, help me. Whoever you are.
You were saying, smart guy?
Okay, that's just creepy.
As far as my thoughts on the PS2 version as a whole, I hate to say it, but it honestly isn't very fun. The gameplay is really bare bones, with just the standard light attack melee chain and a few special abilities that you'll unlock through the course of the game. Gone is the upgrade menu, and you'll instead unlock abilities and stat boosts in a linear order each time your character levels up. It doesn't sound bad on paper, but in practice it made leveling up feel more scripted than earned. I like staggering the unlocks of new abilities since that can keep things fresh throughout the story, but it's at such a slow process that you're nearly at the end of the game by the time you start getting some good variety. Like the PS3 version, combat in general felt very limited and tedious, as I was mostly doing the same things over and over again. Overall, this version felt really uninspired, to the point I got the sense that 7 studios were just going through the motions to complete the game. So in my opinion, it was a huge step down from when they were in control of the first game. I didn't expect it to be a revolutionary game or anything, but I was still disappointed that it was so unexciting. Still, it had some fun differences compared to the PS3 version. For example, during the last level, Silver Surfer will fight alongside you as you hunt down Doom. You can't play as him, and he seems to only have one ability, but it's cool to have him alongside you for the majority of this chapter nonetheless. I also like that the combat arenas return, where you can test your skills against waves of enemies. An important aspect of the arenas is that your allies won't revive if they go down, and like the PS3 version, KOs happen very frequently, making the arenas quite challenging in that sense, but I think it'll still be enjoyable for the players who are wanting to engage more in this game's combat. Another fun detail is during the credits, where there's a small background scene as if the thing did his own motion capture and is being directed by 7 studios.
Yeah! Why can't I break this guy?
Cut! Ben, hold it right there. Couple things. Look, you already broke the guy. Just act surprised. Forget the stunt bot. Remember, in the game, there's going to be a background, enemies, a soundtrack. Just go bigger. Yeah, I'm not feeling it. Again, please. And again. And one more time. Okay, not bad. Where's that stunt bot? Somebody get the... Thank you. Now remember, I want you to surprise me. You know, like you did the last time from the gut. Did you ever take any acting classes? What's wrong? What's he doing? I hate working with superheroes. They can't take a note. Just a bunch of babies. Can someone call Jack or Stan, please? This is gonna be a long day.
So there's some fun to be had in this game, but I'd only recommend it if you're looking for some mindless combat. Even still, it flames out pretty quick, even with it only being about 4 to 5 hours long. So yeah, a bit of a disappointing follow-up for 7 studios, but like with visual concepts, I'm sure the real culprit here is the 15-month deadline. But going back to the visual concepts game, we next cut to another movie scene where the team, along with General Hager and Doom, place the tachyon pulse device in the forest.
So, how did we find this? What did you call him?
Silver Surfer.
He'll find us. Together, the 5 of us are radiating more cosmic energy than any other location on the planet.
My enemy's enemy is my friend. Isn't that how it goes?
Something like that, General.
This is an alliance born of need. Nothing more, sir.
So, what's the plan?
This is a tachyon emitter. It will create a phase disruption in the cosmic energy around the alien, which should temporarily disable him.
Giving us enough time to do some clobbering.
We believe we can capture him in his weakened state.
Assuming that Reed can tune the tachyon emitter properly, as he has not been forthcoming with the data from Kragoff.
Yes. I can do it.
You'd better hurry, Richards.
You're up, Johnny.
Right. I'll lead him back here. Flame on!
Anytime now, Mr. Fantastic.
I'm doing it. A few less distractions would help.
I'm good at batting away pests, Reed. Just say the word.
They're coming back around.
Hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, up!
Got it! System is tracking.
Now, Johnny.
Fire!
Nice shooting, Tex.
Got him!
Got it!
Outstanding. We'll debrief back at the base.
Mine.
What'd you say?
I said, fine. Fine job, everyone.
That cutscene in particular had some strange qualities to me. I feel bad having you sit through all that, but I wanted to highlight the writing again, since this honestly feels very overlong and kinda dull, with humor at the end that doesn't really land. I also thought it was strange how it deviates from the movie, with Surfer being the one to seek them out, instead of them tracking Surfer to this next destination. Also, the way the cutscene is presented makes it seem like Doom was the one who invented the tachyon pulse device, since he's the one explaining it, while Reed just has the necessary data from Red Ghost and seems reluctant to power it. While in the movie, we're shown that Reed was the one who mainly worked on the device, while Doom mostly tinkered with his own secret side project. This scene also felt weird to me because Reed seems kinda passive here too, when this part of the movie seemed to make a strong push in showcasing his leadership qualities and ability to take charge. His speech to the General in the movie was actually a comic reference too, since it was pulled from issue number 2 of Ultimate Extinction, in which he says it to Nick Fury instead of General Hager, another good example of how the General was originally intended to be Nick Fury. Also, we should talk about how the team removes the Surfer's board as a key part of their strategy. In the movie, it's revealed that the board is the source of the Surfer's powers, so removing him from it greatly depowers him. I guess that works for the movie, but it's not accurate to the comics. There, the Surfer's powers are all within himself, so even without the board, he still has his cosmic powers readily accessible. His board mostly helps him fly at greater speeds through space without expending energy, since he can technically fly without it by using cosmic energy as propulsion. Also, if the board is separated from him and he can't retrieve it, Surfer can just manifest a new one. So Surfer's dependence on the board is greatly exaggerated for the movie. The next cutscene shows us in the military base as a team, talking with the Silver Surfer. This is quite different from the movie, since there, Sue had to sneak in to speak with him alone since the military had separated them so they could torture Norrin. Sue was also more important there, since it suggested in the movie that she reminds Norrin of Shalabal, his love on the planet Zen-La. It's this reminder of his previous life that resonates with Surfer and gives him sympathy for the Earth as a whole. That's important because it's a big motivator for Surfer's eventual turn against Galactus. In the comics, things are similar but different. It's also an Earth girl that sparks Surfer to turn against Galactus, but it's not Sue. Instead, it's Alicia Masters, the girlfriend of the Thing. In the game, Sue's impact on Surfer is non-existent, as she just tries to reason with him to no avail. The only insight he gives us is that the board acts as a beacon for Galactus' arrival. This is the extent of the interaction, since it's soon interrupted when Doom bursts in, fully armored and riding on the board, wielding its power. Even though the board isn't the source of the Surfer's powers in the comics, this is still based on them, since there were a few issues where Doom stole the Surfer's power cosmic, and then rode around on his board while attempting to take over the world. Going back to the game, the team now needs to escape the military base and track down Doom. There's not a whole lot to discuss about this level though that we haven't touched on in previous ones, although it is one of the better combat and puzzle chapters. The biggest thing is that it contains Sue's solo mission, which I thought was a solid one. You have to use your invisibility to sneak around a defense-infested area, disabling turret guns and robots as you attempt to reach the main computer. It's puzzly in the sense that you're exploring the area while juggling your energy meter with some decent invisible woman-centered combat, so I think this mission was another highlight. Skipping ahead though, as we exit the base, Doom is waiting outside. He tells us his master plan, which is to stop Galactus single-handedly. After returning as Earth's savior, he then intends to rule the planet. Doom flies away, but Reed has a plan to catch up with him. He calls in his new invention, the Fantasticar. This was an exciting reveal in both the movie and the game, even despite the cheesy Dodge sponsorship slapped onto it, since it's the vehicle used by the team in the comics. Silver Surfer also arrives, requesting we get him back to his board so he can actually stop Galactus by leading him away instead of fighting him. The team trail Doom to China, where he's created an energy cannon to defeat Galactus. This is also our final boss fight of the game. To stop him, we have to first bring him down to the ground, which we accomplish by activating his cannon, which will shoot him off the board. Now we can damage him, but it won't be that easy. Doom is still superpowered, unleashing various giant energy blasts. This fight was a pretty decent one, not too hard, but not too easy either, and I like the franticness of it. Doom was strong enough to regularly stun or down myself and my teammates, forcing me to switch around the team often, which I consider a positive. Still, it's a pretty straightforward fight. Use Doom's cannon to knock him off the board when he goes aerial, and then damage him head-on when he's grounded. As I was playing this level, I actually had no idea this was the final boss, and instead expected some kind of finale section against Galactus, since he's the real threat here. Especially with these 6-axis flying missions as Johnny, I expected the finale to be a Silver Surfer mission, where we have to fly him through debris as he takes on Galactus. But no, things end here much sooner, as once we defeat Doom, we're given our final cutscene.
No!
We ain't out of this yet!
Can you get to Galactus in time?
Oh, he'll make it.
You have saved the humans.
We are human.
Flame on!
We should get married today, Sue. Right now, before something else happens.
Yeah, you never know when the world's gonna end.
Maybe there is hope for the world.
Yeah, but this is weirding me out a little, because now we're like family. And since Mom and Dad took the car, I'm wondering how you're getting home. Later, big guy.
You little son of a... Guess it's gonna be a long walk. I think I'll take my time.
And that concludes the story of the Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer game. The developers really speedrun that ending, don't they? I expect the movie to feel more in-depth compared to its game, but this felt really rushed and underdeveloped. Like, where was Doom even taken to at the end? Cosmic hell? And I can't believe they all just leave Thing in China like it's no big deal. I think the Silver Surfer gets the worst of it though, because despite the movie's faults, the Surfer's portrayal was relatively good. He doesn't have many lines, but through the ones he gets and his facial expressions, you can really sense the tragedy in his life and the conflict he carries through his work with Galactus. Then the cherry on top is the way Sue reminds him of Shalla Bal.
Treasure each moment with her.
So his turn against Galactus feels more understandable in the movie. In the game, it doesn't really make any sense. Plus, we don't even see him do it. He just flies off, never to be seen again. I know in the game, his solution is just to lead Galactus away, but it still feels really anticlimactic. Maybe I should be thankful though, since we don't have to see that stupid Galactus cloud. You may not remember, but the movie even has an end credits scene where we see that the Surfer survived and is still out there, leaving him open for a future film. In fact, it's reported that Fox hired J. Michael Straczynski to pen a screenplay for a Silver Surfer spin-off film, which sadly never happened. In an interview with AMC TV, he provides some details about the story, stating, "The theory was for it to pick up literally the next frame after the FF2 movie, where you find out why Silver Surfer was there and what happened to him. We would have seen Galactus, his homeworld, what happened, and him trying to get back there, because now that he's betrayed Galactus, he's concerned his homeworld might be in jeopardy." I actually really liked the Silver Surfer in this movie, and I think that idea could have been cool, so I would have been into a spin-off film like this. Straczynski also expanded on how Galactus would have looked in that movie, stating, quote, "In the script, I come up with some ways to visualize him that are true to the original, but take it one step further using the current CGI technology that we have. So we would have seen him as a character on numerous occasions in the second movie, not inconsistent with the first distant shot of him in that that's just a way of concealing who and what he really is. Believe me, he would not at all be silly looking." I'm glad to hear they were in the process of bringing Galactus to life, although I guess we'll never know to what degree. The bar's pretty low after the cloud though. Regardless, I actually think this film sounds like it could have been pretty cool, so I'm a bit bummed we didn't get it. It seems the script was fully written, but didn't make it far beyond that as it was cancelled by Fox when the Fantastic Four sequel failed to meet expectations. But going back to the game, now that we've wrapped up the story, let's discuss it as a whole. So let's be real, it's not very good. The writing is quite sloppy, with transitions that make no sense and levels that feel loosely stitched together. We go to levels that serve little to no purpose in the narrative, which is especially glaring because this game is so short. Then of course is the humor, which is super cheesy.
I don't see any scratches.
Me either. Well, no big ones anyway. Except for...
Where? Where?
Reed, there's only one where we should be concerned with right now, and that's where is Victor.
You're right, Sue. Sorry.
Everything about this story feels so rushed and half-hearted. You can almost see the developers scrambling to throw it all together in time for the movie. It's not their fault either, it's unfortunately just the nature of movie tie-in games, and another example of why they've thankfully, for the most part, gone away in recent years. So I imagine the real triumph for visual concepts in this scenario was to just get a functional game out in time at all. Still, if I were to give this game some compliments, the first would be its visuals, not only in the graphical quality itself, which look great when you're not in a dark level, but also the designs for the original characters. Villains like Red Ghost and Terrax come to mind first as great designs that replicate their comic looks while also adapting them in a way that feels fresh and exciting for the game. I can also see some attempts at exciting combat which sadly ultimately fall flat, but I think the foundation is there. If Visual Concepts had the necessary time to balance and polish their game, I actually think they might have been onto something really cool. The way that the team had abilities that also interacted with the environment for certain puzzles was a cool idea, since it adds a nice cohesion between the combat and the environment. The fusion system was another good idea, but I didn't really feel incentivized to use it much in the game's current state. It was tricky getting the correct members aligned in the heat of battle due to the frequency that characters are knocked down, so it felt slow to set up and inconsistent compared to regular abilities. Plus, some of the fusions were a bit unintuitive, like the one where Reed throws Ben for a powerful ground slam. It was tricky to aim because Thing always goes behind Reed instead of in front of him, which was typically where I wanted him to go, and there's no way to aim or reposition once initiated. Similarly, Reed has one with Sue, but he throws her forward. They're really cool abilities that I love to trigger, but I wish I had more control over where they'd land, like how it works in Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2. So again, I really like the idea, but the execution just wasn't quite there. Like I mentioned earlier, I feel like there's a lot of monotony to the combat since I typically had two go-to abilities and never felt pushed to mix things up at all. I think it's why I'm gravitating more to the puzzles and solo missions, since they're the moments that shake things up and get me playing the game differently. So if Visual Concepts had been able to really fine-tune the upgrade system and give the combat that punchiness that the first game had, I think we'd actually have some really great gameplay here that would significantly outshine the first game, because really, this team system is much closer to what I envisioned for a Fantastic Four game. In its current state though, it sadly feels lesser compared to the first game and to a disappointing degree. Even the bonus content feels drastically reduced. In the first game, we had all those concepts, comic artwork, character bios, interviews with actors, developers, and Stan Lee, combat arenas, and we even had extra bonus chapters outside of the story. We were honestly spoiled with the bonus content there. It's much different in the sequel. The interviews, combat arenas, and bonus levels are all gone. What remains are the comic book covers and concept art, although I will say that I enjoyed looking through the various concepts for the game, so I'm glad they're here. Like for example in this one, I think the left enemy is meant to be the minion that fights alongside Silver Surfer in Chapter 2, but I don't recall seeing the minion on the right. It looks to be a Punisher, a minion of Galactus that I actually would have liked to have gone up against. Still, this assortment of bonuses is very small compared to the first game. The main thing it has going for it that the first doesn't though are unlockable outfits, each with their own gameplay perks attached to them, like increased defense or attack damage. For starters, we have the suits from the 1960s which give the team a defense boost and not only look great, but are also the most fitting for this Galactus story. Giving us a strength boost are the 90s suits in the light blue with black collar. although personally I think these resemble the 70s suits more since the 90s collar is more triangular, but that's just me. We also have the ultimate outfits, which have the best bonus, granting strength, defense, and cosmic regeneration boosts. Feels like some favoritism there, but I can't deny these suits look especially great in the game. Last but not least are the 80s suits, which grant a cosmic regeneration bonus, and this set is my personal favorite, mostly because they're really providing that retro vibe I was craving from the Fantastic Four. So the unlockable outfits are certainly a huge perk that this game has over the prior one, and help to make up for the lack of other unlockables. In order to unlock them, there are some secrets scattered around each map, such as silver Fantastic Four coins. As you pick more of them up, you'll unlock extra bonus content. You can also find Doom spy bots hidden around levels as well, and destroying them leads to an evil Doom laugh. Nothing too exciting, but it got me exploring levels more in depth than I would have otherwise, so I think it was successful in that sense. But that's the bonus content. Usually from here I would jump into the gameplay and sound design sections, but since we covered a lot of that already, I think we'll skip it for this video. Before heading to the conclusion though, I do still want to check out some examples of the game's original soundtrack, composed by Ron Fish, who also composed Batman Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. Ron does a good job here, and despite the soundtrack being quite subtle, it still provides some nice ambient and energetic tracks. So next we'll check out a short montage of gameplay clips where we can hear some examples. So overall, nothing that stands out too much, but each track fits its level and the overall vibes of the Fantastic Four without being distracting in the process, so I liked it in that regard. But from here, let's start to wrap things up in the conclusion and talk about future projects coming up.
It's clobbering time.
I hate saying this, but quite frankly, Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer is mediocre at best, and it's a prime example of the stereotypical movie tie-in games that plagued the gaming market for so long. 2007 was a rough year for it too, since it was the same year as the Spider-Man 3 movie game, which I've covered previously, as well as the Pirates of the Caribbean 3 movie game, which I haven't covered yet, but I know it was another one that was reviewed unfavorably. I know for me, and I assume many others, it was the year that really made me lose any remaining optimism I had towards movie games. It may seem silly to have any in the first place, but every now and again, one manages to be a strong title, but it's usually due to factors outside of the original plan, like with Spider-Man 2 for example. That game was so revolutionary for its swing system, but it had a head start because Jamie Fristrom worked on it in his own personal time after hours during the creation of the first game. Or X-Men Origins Wolverine, which received almost an extra year of development time because the movie got delayed. If both of those games had stuck to the original plans, I doubt they'd be nearly as good. My point is that movie games at their core are just rushed cash grabs, and you feel that on every level in this Fantastic Four game. I want to be clear though that my frustration lies with these studios greenlighting these things and not with the developers. In fact, I think the developers get the worst end of the deal. They're given an unrealistically short time frame to produce a game, and from what I've heard about other similar projects, it's also a very stressful time. The odds of making a good game under such limitations are low, so after all that stress and hard work, the result is that you get some asshole reviewer like myself calling it mid at best. Plus, the developer's name is attached to the game now, leaving them with a worse reputation, even though in all reality, they didn't even get the chance to deliver their full potential. In a 15-month development timeline, there's little to no room to be creative and iterate on ideas. So I'm sympathetic to visual concepts here, and I appreciate the areas where they attempted to innovate, and ultimately, this is still the game that comes closest to being what I envisioned for a Fantastic Four game. I think when comparing the two movie games, the first is better in a general sense, but it struggles to deliver what I expect from a team game, where the sequel game feels more aligned with what I want in that way. So if you're looking for a Fantastic Four game to just feel like the team, this is the one I'd recommend. But as for which one has the better fun factor, I'd point you towards the first game. Regardless of which is better, I wish both Seven Studios and Visual Concepts have been able to create a Fantastic Four game outside of the constraints of a movie, because I think both had good ideas, and I would have liked to have seen what they both produced in a setting where they could fully dive in and explore their creativity, unshackled. Visual Concepts might have actually been given another shot, presumably at least, since there were talks of a third movie. Reportedly, all the actors signed a 3-picture deal, including Julian McMahon, so Dr. Doom probably would have returned. Tim Story, the director of the first two movies, also stated he wanted to return and introduce Black Panther. Still, a third film was quietly cancelled along with the Silver Surfer spin-off when the 2007 film failed to meet expectations. Still, there were some interesting ideas floating around there, and personally, I like this cast, and I would have been interested in seeing a third film to tie things together more conclusively. But instead, Fox opted to reboot the franchise, which led to the 2015 Fantastic Four movie, and the less said about that, the better. Now we at least have the MCU's Fantastic Four, which I personally thought was very good. Now I just hope someone takes a crack at developing a full-fledged Fantastic Four game, unrelated to the movie of course. But we'll have to continue crossing our fingers for that one in the meantime. And I think that wraps up my thoughts on the Fantastic Four sequel game, so let's next look to the future of this channel. Even though I just preached about how bad movie games are conceptually, I have to admit that I enjoy exploring them and their movies in these videos, so I'm going to be a bit of a hypocrite and look at a few more coming up. Firstly, I know in prior videos I mentioned wanting to explore the Batman and Robin movie game as part of my casual retrospective series, but I'm going to push that one back a bit because I thought it would be fun to look at the two Blade movie games as we enter into spooky season. The goal being Blade 1 for PS1 releasing in September, while Blade 2 for PS2 will come out in October, so keep an eye out for those in the future. As far as my deep dive retrospectives, I think it's time to finally start gearing up for a video on Insomniac's Spider-Man 2. That'll be a big project and one I want to build up to, so we'll first start with the Miles Morales game, which I'm hoping to have out in the winter of this year, meaning Spider-Man 2 will be sometime early next year. In the meantime, if you haven't already, you can check out my 2-part retrospective on the first game and its DLCs. I have plenty more videos that I'm planning between now and then though, as I'm pushing to start doing monthly releases, so this certainly isn't the extent of my plans. You can also find me on Instagram and TikTok where I make daily posts. I've also recently opened up a Patreon where you can get exclusive content and receive early access to new videos. A huge shout out and thank you to everyone currently supporting the channel this way. I really appreciate your generosity. But I think that'll cover things for this video, so thank you again for watching and I'll see you again when we discuss Blade PS1. Take care.